Welcome everyone to Buddhist Center. Thank you all for coming. My name is Jeff Allen. Today we are once again looking at Lama Tsongkhapa's great treatise on the stages of the path to enlightenment. So any day that we can do that is just such a wonderful day because it's a text that includes all of the stages that are necessary for a being, any being, to be able to achieve the state of complete Buddhahood. It's a flawless presentation that doesn't miss any points that are necessary. So any day that we can look at all or even a part of such a wonderful text, we're so lucky. And they aren't just stages of the path that would lead to some sort of temporary happiness, maybe in the higher realms of cyclic existence, or some kind of non-complete level of freedom at the state of nirvana. And when I say non-complete, because we'd still have obstructions to omniscience, we'd still, even though we were in nirvana with some presentations, we would still have to go back then and remove obstructions to omniscience, that are those imprints that are left over from the afflictive obstructions, even if we were in nirvana. So we don't have instructions that lead to that kind of incomplete level of personal accomplishment. We have the instructions which lead us to the complete level of freedom. And when I say complete level of freedom, a complete level of freedom from fear and infinite happiness. And infinite happiness because we have fulfilled our own needs and others' needs by developing ourselves to the fullest way, because we will have practiced a path that leads us to that fruition, that leads us to that accomplishment, that allows us to mature ourselves to a state of perfection. And it's only the Mahayana instructions, the great vehicle instructions, which allow us to achieve that complete level of perfection. And fortunately, we've had wonderful teachers, and our root teacher, my root teacher, Kensur Geshe Wandak, presented us with this instruction in a complete fashion, in a flawless way. And put ornaments all around Lama Tsongkhapa's great treatise of the stages of the path to enlightenment. And then ultimately, and actually first, Rinpoche, if everyone remembers, taught Atisha's lamp for the path to enlightenment, which is considered the root text to this. So we've seen jewelry and beautiful ornaments put all over these wonderful texts. The root text of the Lam Rim Chemo, Atisha's lamp for the path to enlightenment, Rinpoche adorned. And then Lama Tsongkhapa's great treatise on the stages of the path to enlightenment, he then adorned for over a decade with great jewels of commentaries, and also even reinforcing it, in a backwards fashion, in a sense, by using the Indian commentaries to reinforce Lama Tsongkhapa's presentation. So Rinpoche was so kind to us to give us such a view and such a foundation from which to grow from. So I just want to really just say, as always, thank you to Kensur Geshe Wandak and all the great gurus, all the great teachers who we've had the opportunity to learn from. But we all have one very common thing, in fact, and we have one very common teacher that we've spent very much time with, because I see all the names on the screen right now. And everyone has spent an enormous amount of time with Kensur Geshe Wandak. So we all know how kind he was to us. We know what he did for us in terms of our understanding and the foundation that he allowed us to grow from. So I just want to, as always, say thank you to Rinpoche, and that we all, every day of our lives, remember the kindness that he showed us, and never, ever forget that. And we've arrived at relying on a teacher. So let's get into a posture before we get started with this teaching. And let's get into an intentional posture that we have talked about many times, the 7-point Vairocana posture, or whatever adaptation we have to do for our own personal physical ability. So let's get into that posture with the legs, the hands, the back straight like a stack of coins, arms slightly bowed with the shoulders in a comfortable fashion. So the legs, the hands, the back, and the shoulders making 4. The head slightly tilted downward 5, the eyes slightly open, pointed at the nose, and then the tongue on the top of the roof of the mouth, touching the back, allowing for the saliva to circulate and allowing for us to meditate for long periods of time when we're able to in the future without becoming very thirsty. It allows us to not have our mouth dry up as readily, and leave your mouth in a comfortable position that isn't pierced but isn't wide open. And if it was wide open, it would also allow it to dry out more. So we get into this posture, which becomes more and more comfortable and becomes more and more suitable for meditation as we become more familiar with this posture. And I've said many times that you'll actually feel, even with the slightest little movement, when you get more alignment, that you'll feel that, oh, this is actually a lot more comfortable. This is something that I could stay in for a much longer period of time. And it's actually just getting familiar with and adjusting your body to that very subtle alignment that you're trying to achieve. When we say like a stack of coins, that's a very subtle alignment that we're speaking of when we're looking at ultimately trying to align these channels and so forth. Central, right, and left. No need to get into too many details, but we're going to need to get to a very, very, very specific posture with a very, even subtle variations wouldn't allow for alignment of. So when you're in a meditation posture and you start to feel, oh, wow, I just kind of moved a tiny bit and it became so much more suitable for me, or it became so much better for me. You'll find that a lot of times that's just you adjust. It's just an adjustment towards a better, more symmetric, if you will. I think that's the word. Posture that's really, really aligning the things in the way that they need to be aligned in order to flow properly. So with that in mind, with that little piece of education in mind, let's get into that posture in the best way that we can, and then focus on the breath coming in and out of our nose, drawing it in a complete fashion all the way to the top, and then exhaling it all the way to the bottom, and then actually only focusing on that breath. And you could also count the breath as well, but make sure that your focus is on that breath and the numbers of the breath, not on the kind of external things going on that you may have come to this class thinking about, things we're attached to or things that we dislike. Those kind of 2 reactions we're trying to push out of our mind and kind of center it to a more neutral place, a more realistic place that we can then grow virtue from and grow intention from. So we'll take a moment to focus on the breath and rely upon the breath. Start to think about the reason for attending a class like this morning. What did the Buddha teach that draws us Sunday morning at 10 a.m.? to listen to his or her words. Think about our own suffering and what the Buddha stated about suffering in the First Noble Truth. Think about the various coarse sufferings that we have to experience. Illness, loss, meeting with unpleasant things, being separated from pleasant things, general dissatisfactions that we have. And we recognize that the Buddha stated that this was called the suffering of suffering. Think about the various forms of happiness that we have, the things that we like. We think about how those things that we like have changed. All the various forms of happiness that we crave, when we get to them, they eventually turn into a form of suffering as we're separated from them, or as it becomes something that we didn't expect. These things bait us over and over again to believe that everything is okay, to believe that we're not suffering, and that this state we're living in is sufficient. They bait us into cyclic existence over and over again. These forms of happiness have no solid type of permanent, lasting happiness. And we recognize that through our karma, driven by afflictions, thinking incorrectly and grasping at true establishment, we'll be forced again and again and again into contaminated aggregates, contaminated parts, contaminated being, like the one we are right now, and worse in many cases, in most cases, with the sufferings of birth, aging, sickness, and death, the suffering of meeting with the pleasant, the suffering of being separated from the pleasant, meeting with the unpleasant, the suffering of not getting what you want, the suffering of being forced into contaminated aggregates again and again and again. And the Buddha said that the contaminated happiness that changes into suffering is called the suffering of change, and that being forced into aggregates over and over again is the pervasive compounded suffering, and that all beings in the prison of cyclic existence have to endure that suffering. The Buddha's taught us that suffering has a cause. Nagarjuna states that the cause is the grasping at the I, and then improper mental conduct, which leads to afflictions and contaminated karma and leads to suffering. The Buddha stated that this could all end by relying on a path that was realized. It wasn't made up, that was realized. A solution was found. So we should feel such happiness that we have this opportunity to not have to experience that first noble truth, because the Buddha found a solution. The Buddha didn't make a solution, the Buddha found the solution. The solution was always there. And the Buddha was so kind to share that solution with us. And our teachers are so kind to share that solution with us. We should feel so happy about that. Now we start to think of others that we care for. And think about that entire process that we just went through for ourselves and understand that they too have all of those sufferings and there's a solution for them as well. And so many of those beings that we think about, that we care about, that we know about, don't have this solution. They haven't met with a truth like this. And who knows when they will. You start to spread that thought out to everyone. Dogs, cats, worms, bugs. Strangers who just walk by in the supermarket and understand that they want to be happy like me. They have pain like me. They don't have a solution, but I do. But how could I reach them? How could I ever get the solution to them? I want them to be happy. If what they say is true about the hell realms, the hot and cold hell, 8 hot, 8 cold hell, wow, I would like them to be happy and be free from suffering. If it's true what they say about hungry ghosts and all of those sufferings, I wish they didn't have those. I wish they could be happy. And the animals, we can see the sufferings that they have. Humans, we are humans. We know the sufferings we have. And if the demigods and gods have it a little bit better than us, but then have to do any among the things just mentioned again, over and over and over again, and they'll feel so great. We've all had the highest peaks of joy and then crashed. We know that'll happen to them. And how many of those sentient beings will have the opportunity we have at this very moment to know the truth and to study just like we have. So as we sit and think about this and recognize that since beginningless time, we've had rebirths and we've had every relationship with these beings, and they've been as kind to us as the kindest person we can imagine, every sentient being. We really, really, really want them to be happy and be free from suffering. And then when we say, okay, I'll do this, I'm going to take it upon myself the task of freeing them all. I know I've been presented with the truth. Any realistic person will see that at this moment isn't possible. We're lacking all kinds of things that would be necessary to reach every single sentient being and figure out how to help them simultaneously. It's not a very long meditation for us to figure out whether we're reliable in that sense or not, or qualified in that sense or not. And once we start to study and start to understand the qualities that a Buddha has and that we will have if we become a Buddha, then it becomes completely obvious what has to be done. We must become Buddhists if we want to fulfill our needs and other sentient beings' needs. So it's for this reason that we're attending this class on Lama Tsongkhapa's Great Treatise of the Stages of the Path to Enlightenment. It's this reason that we're reciting the Heart Sutra and meditating on the explicit meaning of emptiness and the implicit meaning of the 5 paths. Teata Om Gate Gate Paragate Parasangati Bodhisoha. The implicit meaning of the 5 paths that are empty of inherent existence. And then all of the other prayers, making a mandala offering, a perfect world to all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas in the lineage of teachings, all the way to the instructor you're hearing the words from, for the sake of becoming a Buddha, for the sake of becoming an object worthy of a mandala offering, a pure, pure, pure mandala offering. Someone who could actually be the recipient of a pure land. And then we go for refuge. And the refuge prayer that we're about to do is the Mahayana refuge, is going for refuge to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha to become a Buddha for the sake of everyone, for the sake of all sentient beings. Listening to this teaching to become a Buddha for the sake of sentient beings. You see in the refuge prayer that it gets slightly changed when we're listening to a teaching. Normally it says, by practicing giving and the other perfections, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. This is through listening to the teaching, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. So we're saying, through the power of me being here right now, through that truth, may I become a Buddha for everyone's sake. So if we can really, really have that motivation for being here, I'm here to become a Buddha for everyone's sake, it will make it just that much more powerful in terms of the conviction that we put behind that karma. So with that, let's get started with the Heart Sutra. The Sutra of the Heart of Transcendent Knowledge. Thus have I heard, once the Blessed One was dwelling in Rajagriha at Vulture Peak Mountain, together with a great gathering of the Sangha of monks and a great gathering of the Sangha of Bodhisattvas. At that time, the Blessed One had samadhi that expresses the Dharma called profound illumination. At the same time, noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, while practicing the profound Prajnaparamita, saw in this way. He saw the five skandhas to be empty of nature. Then, through the power of the Buddha, Venerable Shariputra said to noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, how should a son or daughter of noble family train who wishes to practice a profound Prajnaparamita? Addressed in this way, noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, said to Venerable Shariputra, O Shariputra, a son or daughter of noble family who wishes to practice a profound Prajnaparamita should see in this way. Seeing the five skandhas to be empty of nature. Form is emptiness, emptiness also is form. Emptiness is no other than form, form is no other than emptiness. In the same way, feeling, perception, formation, and consciousness are emptiness. Thus, Shariputra, all dharmas are emptiness. There are no characteristics. There is no birth and no cessation. There is no impurity and no purity. There is no decrease and no increase. Therefore, Shariputra, in emptiness there is no form, no feeling, no perception, no formation, no consciousness, no eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind, no appearance, no sound, no smell, no taste, no touch, no dharmas, no I dhatu up to no mind dhatu, no dhatu of dharmas, no mind consciousness dhatu, no ignorance, no end of ignorance up to no old age and death, no end of old age and death, no suffering, no origin of suffering, no cessation of suffering, no path, no wisdom, no attainment, and no non-attainment. Therefore, Shariputra, since the Bodhisattvas have no attainment, they abide by means of Prajnaparamita. Since there is no obscuration of mind, there is no fear. They transcend falsity and attain complete nirvana. All the Buddhas of the three times, by means of Prajnaparamita, fully awaken to unsurpassable, true, complete enlightenment. Therefore, the great mantra of Prajnaparamita, the mantra of great insight, the unsurpassed mantra, the unequaled mantra, the mantra that calms all suffering, should be known as truth, since there is no deception. The Prajnaparamita mantra is said in this way: Te ata om gate gate paragate parasangati buddhisoha. Thus, Shariputra, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, should train in the profound Prajnaparamita. Then the Blessed One arose from that samadhi and praised noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, saying, Good, good, O son of noble family. Thus it is, O son of noble family. Thus it is. One should practice the profound Prajnaparamita just as you have taught, and all the Tathagatas will rejoice. When the Blessed One had said this, Venerable Shariputra and noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, that whole assembly in the world with its gods, humans, asuras, and Gandharvas, rejoiced and praised the words of the Blessed One. Aga samara dajanara samara yame de adong gade gade baragade barasangade bade so baba ganja sanji gai de me doji she baba doji me doji she baba doji ragi baje me de me shotanji je de gai so gerin don jaje je she wa da me do no ve jan dan de wa da to ba don jin bon zon zon jo ji da shi de chan de da de le sho. The fundamental ground is scented with incense and strewn with flowers, adorned with Mount Meru, the four continents, the sun and the moon. I imagine this as a Buddha land and offer it. May all sentient beings enjoy this pure realm. Holy Lamas High, wrap the sky of your Dharma bodies in massive clouds of knowledge and love, and let them pour upon the earth of your disciples as we are ready, a shower of rain, the teachings deep and wide. I send forth this jeweled mandala to you, precious Guru. Idam Guru Rana Mandala Gam Nirada Yami. Zanje Jadan Jye Janam La Yanjo Bado Danye Jazuji Dagi Jishe Jipe Sonam Ji Rula Ben Ye Zanje Drupasho Zanje Jadan Jye Janam La Yanjo Bado Danye Jazuji Dagi Jishe Jipe Sonam Ji la benje zanje de bajo zanje de dan de janama janjo bado dani jasuchi dagi jushe de bezananje de la benje zanje de bajo. May this teaching be understood by all sentient beings in their individual languages. Okay, so we're all here again. So fantastic. We made it. We made it to another Sunday. We were not, swept up by the Lord of Death. And, every week I kind of make that joke. But when we do these meditations over and over and over again, it is said, I haven't reached that place yet, that, every moment we would have this in mind and be that motivation of and understanding that death will come, we don't know when, and nothing can help us with but Dharma. The holy being, Lama Zopa Rinpoche, said that's what is always in his mind that thrusts him into his Dharma practice. It's that understanding of reality that isn't a grumpy or a negative understanding that, that says, oh, this is all so terrible. It's an intelligent understanding that says, oh, this is what it is. It is terrible compared to infinite happiness. So I must do something about it at all moments, because death will come. Nothing can stop it, right? Life is always being subtracted from, never added to. We don't have a lot of time to practice Dharma. We don't know when we're going to die. There's so many things can make us die. This body is so fragile. Friends can't help. Money can't help. Material things can't help. The only thing that can help us is Dharma. And, Lama Zopa Rinpoche said that when we have this in our mind at all times, then we just arrive at the only thing that can help us is Dharma. Logically, when we get through this, meditation with these, 9 reasons, it's almost like these 8 reasons lead to this 9th thing where you say nothing can help but Dharma. And that realization makes you only day and night do Dharma. Because if you realize there's only one thing that can help, and you realize what cyclic existence is, it's really a prison that we're in, and the only one who can get us out is ourselves. It's a very interesting prison that we have a key. We can be given multiple keys over and over again. Sometimes we just throw the keys away and say, oh, we don't really, this key looks a little difficult to put into the lock. So, maybe I don't want to deal with this key because that key just doesn't look like it's just a straight shot into the lock. And then some of the easier keys, we're able to, take on. But eventually we'll need all of those keys, the difficult keys, the easy keys, to open that lock of the prison of cyclic existence. And when we believe that we are in a prison of cyclic existence, and then we recognize that the current state that we have is fleeting, and that we're in really the best state possible for studying, that will make us do that day and night. That will make us want to practice day and night and meditate on these teachings day and night, and understand that as we learned, as we were reading in the 4 categories of the great treatise on the stages of the path to enlightenment, it says that first we look at the greatness of the teaching's author in order to know that it's from noble origin. So we went through that. We learned about Lord Atisha, we learned about Lama Tsongkhapa, and then we can also talk about all the amazing teachers who gave commentary on these texts and so forth. And then we obviously, if we're speaking of Atisha, we know that Atisha took all of the teachings of the profound view and the extensive deeds lineage and the lineage of blessings and put them together. So then we, have to pay homage to those authors as well. We have to pay homage to Lopa, to Naropa, to Asanga, Maitreya. We have to pay homage to Manjushri and Nagarjuna and Chandrakirti as well, and understand that they're from noble origin. So if we're doing a real extensive look at this first, the teaching's author, that's very interpretable. So that first category seems simple because we just read about Lord Atisha here. But then when we're speaking about it, our teacher's author is Lama Tsongkhapa here. And then in the very first part, it says that this is a commentary on Atisha's text in a specific fashion, but in a greater fashion on the Abhisamalamkara. So then so many great beings were really, really establishing as the author and the noble origin of this teaching. And that's why we pay homage to, in the prologue, in that section, to all of this entire lineage of beings of the extensive deeds, profound view lineage, etc. So we already did that in an extensive fashion, so we don't need to do that again. But it's important to understand that this lineage, that Lord Atisha didn't start the stages of the path to enlightenment teachings. Lord Atisha put them into a fashion that we now can call the stages of the path to enlightenment. But when we look at, the texts that were maybe before that, they encompass all of those things as well. And there was no new information that Lord Atisha brought to the surface. And that's what's important to understand. He took pure information and put ornaments on the pure information so that pure information could be more detectable for those that aren't as sharp, for those that need more shiny objects to kind of bring their mind to get to that purity. So it's important for us to understand that Lord Atisha didn't make anything new up. Lord Atisha took what Buddha Shakyamuni taught and showed us what Buddha Shakyamuni meant, showed folks who were a little more dull, like myself, what Buddha Shakyamuni meant. And that's why when we looked, at the greatness of the teaching, which was the second category, so that we engender respect, so that we have this, it's bigger than just kind of like, yes, I kind of respect you. It's like an wholehearted respect that you develop when you see how great these teachings are, because you understand that, wow, by understanding the way that Atisha presented this, we can see that none of the Buddha's teachings contradict themselves. Whereas if I just looked at a sutra and because of my naive, ignorant mind, I would have no idea what was going on. And I think that seems contradictory. That doesn't make sense. Where would that fit? And I would really have a hard time, because of my lack of sharp capacity, to be able to sort it all out. So Atisha was able to show how it all sorts out and none of it's contradictory. So this was the first wonderful part that we learned about the greatness of the teaching, and then was able to show that all of the teachings were instructions to practice, so that everything that the Buddha taught was something that was to be practiced. It was to be put into an activity. There was a reason for everything that the Buddha taught. There was something behind it, and what was behind it was showing a sentient being how to practice, how to incorporate it in one's sitting meditation and when one stands up as well, that everything was an instruction to practice. And then Atisha showed us how you could easily understand, because of sorting it all out, what the Buddha's intent was. So that's the third thing. And then by relying on Atisha's text and his sorting it all out, because we needed it sorted out, because we weren't as sharp as others who didn't need it sorted out, we could see, oh, this isn't contradictory. This is an instruction to practice. Oh, this is literal. This is figurative based on this reason. And then we could see that there's no reason to abandon the Dharma. And it's said that by abandoning the Dharma, by saying, oh, the Hinayana is bad, the Mahayana is great, Tantrayana is good, but the perfection vehicle really doesn't have all the components. By doing that, you abandon the Dharma. And by understanding that all of these dharmas were for A, and think about the varieties of A, sentient being, to become enlightened. And think about the varieties and the multitude, the infinite number, this number that our little minds can't count. So we say countless. There's a number, but our little minds can't count it. So we say countless, countless beings of countless varieties. There'd have to be so many varieties of things said to them in order to ripen them to perfection, untangling all these varieties of imperfection, right? To get to perfection. And knowing that all of the varieties and all of these things to untangle are not the perfection part. And there's this little tiny thing that has the potential, because of its clarity, to be matured into that perfection through removal of the imperfection, through removal of that which is not knowing, that which is incorrect. So interesting. And that's why everyone who really starts to get serious about this starts to analyze this in a serious, serious way. The Venerable Lobsang Dunyu and I, for last night, yesterday, today, we're going back and forth, having like, it's like a little debate. We're investigating some things together. You know, I'm taking the Nalanda course, and, you know, so we're having some conversations, you know, and he and I are, you know, duly together investigating things. And it's just so wonderful to be able to, you know, and it's, you know, not like the most ending, final, most complex topics. So even basic topics can just be like, as I said, like, you know, crushing the sesame seeds to make the tahini, you know, crushing it. There's still little particles in there. It's not quite smooth tahini yet, you know. There's still things in there that need to be crushed and need to be understood more in order to have such clarity and have real faith. It's not controvertible. And because it says in Nagarjuna's, the beginning of the precious Karland, you know, between faith and wisdom. Wisdom, of course, is chief, but faith is its prerequisite. To get to that wisdom, you need that faith. In the text, in the low rig text, it says that you can get to this faith kind of, and you can get to an inferential, valid cognition. You can get to something that's not convertible through faith if you really have analyzed it properly. So that's the kind of thing that we need to get to in order to believe the only thing that helps is Dharma, and then day and night, that's all we do, right? Right? We would need to, okay, we're going to die, that's fine. But we have to establish that the Dharma is what matters, because just dying isn't going to make us do the Dharma. We have to arrive at the only thing that helps is Dharma. But that means that if we arrive there, we have faith. And then we go all the way back to refuge, right? Like we talked about on Thursday night, you know, fear and faith, the causes for the arisal of refuge. And that faith isn't blind. That faith isn't Buddha is like handsome, or, you know, Tara is beautiful. You know, I would love to, you know, have all of those qualities I hear about. They're believing that those qualities are real through studying and understanding how they could be and how those qualities will be yours and will have to be yours. Very interesting. So then we learned, wow, this teaching is so great. It contains everything. It contains all the instructions of all of the Indian Pandits, the tantric instructions, the profound view instructions, the extensive deeds instructions, and didn't miss any of it, right? So we find this out. Then we learned how to listen to the teaching, you know, how to actually gain the wisdom arisen from hearing. We have to hear it correctly. So the last few classes, we went over how to not be like a pot that's upside down, not listening, not be like a contaminated pot that comes in with all these ideas and is just checking things, right? And just to see if they can accord with what you were trying to kind of come in with, or a pot that's leaky and you're just kind of half paying attention and forgetting things. Said that we had to kind of listen like we were an ill person, and looking at the instructor as a doctor and as the teaching as medicine, and as taking the actual medicine, not leaving it on the table, as doing the practice that could cure it, and then looking at these excellent, excellent things that the Buddha is, and then wanting it to stay in this world. So that's why we're listening to this teaching. And then it talked about how to give a teaching, you know, what kind of thought you should have while you're giving an instruction. No, you should look at yourself like a doctor, people as patients, et cetera, et cetera. It's all in the Lam Rim. And that you shouldn't be doing it for material gain and fame. You should be doing it to mature your own mind. Right at the beginning of Shanti Deva's Guide to the Bodhisattva's Way of Life, he says, I'm not really good at this. I don't have any special way of talking. I'm doing this to kind of acquaint it more with my own mind. And if by doing so, it helps you too, then that's excellent, right? I'm paraphrasing, obviously, then that's great. But really, I'm doing this to acquaint myself with it. And I can't tell you how like valuable it is for me to be able to speak about this holy words, to think about them, and to make sure that what I'm saying is correct, checking it beforehand and making sure that the quotes are the appropriate quotes and so forth. So helpful for me. Now we've arrived at how to lead students to the actual instructions, part 4. And we get into the first topic, relying on the teacher. And we see so many places, for so many obvious reasons, that we first have to have a teacher. If we, let's read from Lama Tsongkhapa's Lam Rim Duden. Respectively, I prostrate to my own spiritual masters. You are the eyes allowing disciples to behold all of the infinite scriptural pronouncements, the best ford for those of good fortune to cross to liberation. You make everything clear through your skillful deeds, which are moved by intense loving concern. So we think about our teachers, we think about His Holiness the Dalai Lama, and all of the good that His Holiness the Dalai Lama has been able to do. And Khenser Geshe Wanda, and Geshe Lobsang Gompo, Lama Zopa Rinpoche, all of these great masters, and now Geshe Dorje Damdu, my new teacher, and Geshe Aga, the chanting master, Umzila, my teacher in India. Why go find these beings, right? Why would we seek out these beings that don't really know how to make money in a great way, right? They don't know how, most of them, to even drive cars, the ones I've known. Like, they make an attempt at it and it fails miserably usually. Maybe some of the younger ones are driving great, but a lot of the older ones are like, yeah, I'd love to. Even Rinpoche got in a parking lot. It wasn't successful, not recently, but maybe 20 years ago, they did an experiment with Rinpoche, maybe seeing if he could drive, and just not, can't even do these things that we would just consider like a teenager should just be able to pick up through a couple of things. They can't tell us, good tips on investments, or who we should necessarily, is the right partner for us, right? They're not like, what do they have to offer us that would make us seek these types of beings out? Well, if we wanted to learn, and I'm going to use all Rinpoche speak, because this is, what he talked about. We wanted to learn the alphabet. So Rinpoche did learn the alphabet. Rinpoche actually spoke quite a bit of English, which kind of teetered out, as he, wasn't using it as much, but he spoke quite a bit of English. He passed he's an American citizen. I don't know if you've ever looked at that test, but, it's not like he had notes in his hand or something. He passed that test. So he would always give examples like, okay, so if you want to learn the alphabet, you have to go to somebody who knows the alphabet. You want to know how the pronunciation of it is exactly. And if you want to know the pronunciation of it, say in the native place specifically, Geshe Dorje Damdu even gets more specific. Like, if you want to know how to pronounce it specifically, you have to go to the native place. Like, how do they say this word or that letter, right? If you want to be able to say it correctly. So you find someone who suits the alphabet the way that you want to learn the alphabet. You would find a teacher who could specifically teach that to you. If you could find the absolute best teacher, you'd want one that pronounced everything properly, that knew the alphabet in the exact order, and that there wasn't anything missing in terms of what you would receive from that teacher about the alphabet. You wouldn't miss anything. You'd know exactly how to say A, B. You'd know how your lips would form and exactly what you would need to do. So you could sound, if your goal was to sound like a native speaker, you would want to be able to learn it in its exact detail, if that was your goal. If your goal was to be able to sound like everyone who's around you in the particular region that you're in, and you don't speak that language, you would want to be able to, and your goal was to be able to, sound exactly like everyone else, you would have to find someone to teach you who could teach you how to sound exactly like everyone else, how to pronounce it exactly like everyone else. A, B, what you would have to do exactly. So you would have to seek out a teacher who could give you a flawless instruction. So there was no flaw then in the result of your A, B, C, D, E, F, etc. You would have to be taught it flawlessly, unless you wanted to like spend an enormous amount of time learning it kind of right, and then having someone correct you, and then say, no, that's not how you say it. Your teacher was wrong. You'd really want to find the best teacher, right? Right from the start. So you wouldn't have to go through this learning curve. Just learn it right the first time. You want to learn how to drive a car, same thing. You want someone who knows how, oh, I forgot to tell you, you have to put your blinker on when you take a left, right? You want someone who's going to tell you all the details so that when you get done with that driving class, you know all the details. So you're not going to get pulled over and they're going to say license and registration. Well, what did I do? Do you know what you did? Well, no, I didn't know what I did. That's not going to get you out of the ticket, right? The excuses that your teacher wasn't good enough, right? The excuses that you weren't getting the right information aren't going to be good enough when it comes to the real examination of your driving skills, when you're out on the road and you're either driving according to all of the laws or you're not. And if you're not, eventually the law will correct that for you. It will pull you over and say, oh, you didn't put your blinker on. Well, my driving teacher never told me, well, maybe you shouldn't be driving then, because you obviously weren't, you'd probably get something like that, taught how to drive correctly, ma'am or sir or ma'am, right? You obviously were not taught how to drive correctly. So just like those two examples, you need to find a teacher if you want to learn Buddhism who knows Buddhism. Obvious, right? And when we look at what is Buddhism, when we want to learn Buddhism, in these two cases, we're just learning how to do one very, very small specific thing. We're trying to get rid of the ignorance related to the alphabet. Okay, so then we go to a teacher, we get taught, and we can remove the ignorance that's related to the alphabet. We go to driving school, we can get rid of the ignorance that's related to the ignorance of driving a car. We can remove that. Then we have the wisdom that knows how to drive a car. We have the wisdom that knows the alphabet once we've gotten rid of those two ignorances. But in the case of what we're trying to do spiritually in Buddhism, we're trying to arrive at a wisdom that gets rid of all our ignorance, every form of ignorance. So when we're talking about our goal in Buddhism, we're talking about arriving at the complete abandonment of every type of ignorance, a state of omniscience. Wow, this is much more complicated than trying to just learn something very simple that has very, very simple for everyone rules. Now we're trying to learn something that has almost a personalized element to it, because each and every one of us has our varying degrees of distractions and ignorances and emphasis on negativities and emphasis on positive qualities. So how then, if we, at any given time, any given person, there's all of these varieties of things that have to be fixed, how can we know how to do that? Who would know how to do that? Who would know how to work on those varieties? Well, first of all, obviously an omniscient being would know how to work on all of those varieties. And in our world, we don't know. We can't say if there are omniscient beings. We can rely on logic and say that through logic, yes, there are, and through logic, we can even arrive at that our teachers very well are. But what we can say we have for sure is we have the Lam Rim teachings that give a really, really basic overview, right? That allow us personally to look in the mirror of that overview and then arrive at where, if we're honest with ourselves, where we are at. And then we can check those things with the teacher, or we can continue to go to that teaching to see if it's where we think we are is reliable, or if we need more improvement, and so forth. So if we want to learn the English language, we go to an English teacher. If we want to learn how to drive, we go to a driving teacher. If we want to learn about Buddhism, we go to a teacher who knows about Buddhism. So do we just go to any teacher that knows about Buddhism? You know, that's the question. Is it suitable just to go listen to any teacher that knows about Buddhism? If you're super, super high scope and realized and won't get confused, of course, you know, you can listen to anything, right? And it won't blow you around like a leaf in the wind. You can listen to things and understand how they maybe would fit. You can understand how, oh, maybe this was at a lower scope of teaching. Or you could even understand that the person has it wrong altogether. But if you don't first investigate the teacher and get a pretty good understanding, nowadays we're lucky, right? It's a lot easier to investigate teachers, you know. With the internet, it seems easier to me to kind of get bios, find out who they're affiliated with, find out what degree they achieved, find out what center they're from, you know, kind of see where else they've given teachings, and so forth. And you can kind of come to a determination. Are they affiliated with His Holiness the Dalai Lama, et cetera, et cetera. You can kind of come to a determination, like a starting point of, okay, what teacher would be an appropriate teacher to attend the class of, right? So I want to learn about Buddhism. I understand that I'm trying to get rid of an ignorance of everything. You know, I know how hard it was to get rid of other kinds of ignorance. So I needed someone who really was like a laser scope understanding of how to get rid of those other kinds of ignorance for me to do so. So I've got to find someone who can do that for me as well. So of course, you have to start somewhere. So you start at, as recently I heard the Lojong Rinpoche say, you know, look up a specific teacher on the internet and then write scandal after their name and press enter. That's a good start. Lojong Rinpoche said, you know, he said, we have the internet. He said, here gossip is kind of helpful. These days, we've really got to check teachers because they're so easy to get on planes. It's so easy to put on robes. It's so easy to make money with spirituality. So much easier to make money with spirituality that sounds nicer to the ears than a lot of the actual truth of philosophy and the stages of the path. So things are kind of distorted and presented in a way that tastes better in order to make money. And then suddenly, you know, new teachings are discovered and they are blessed, you know, by someone you've never heard of in a foreign land. Well, so-and-so Rinpoche blessed this as an authentic new transmission. And then it's just off and running, right? So we need to make sure we're not chasing around things that are just like, seem just so abstract. Like if it's just so abstract and we're just beginners trying to learn the foundation of tenets, that's not usually how you learn the foundation of something and get to know something and get an understanding of something through the abstract. So my suggestion would be, and what I was taught is find somebody who knows this information clearly somehow or another. And it doesn't, we have so many great Western scholars that I'm watching now too. We have Alexander Berzin, and we have so many great scholars that are giving talks that are not ordained, that are completely qualified because they had great teachers and they, went through various instructions with them over and over and over again, and they're able to present clarity to the teachings. So Alan Wallace is another one who's presents great clarity to the teachings. Robert Thurman presents clarity. Jeffrey Hopkins presents great clarity. Guy Newman presents great clarity. I mean, there's so many great teachers out there these days giving discussions. But you need to check to make sure if you're going to show up at their introduction to this or their Madhyamika class on that, that they have the ability to present the information. I mean, if you hear me advertising, the stages of the highest yoga tantra path, run. Like, I don't have the qualification to give that teaching, right? I haven't received enough instruction about that to give a qualified instruction on that, but make sure that the class you're sitting in, the person talking about is qualified to talk about what they're talking about, and that they've, come to some, become qualified through some means. We'll just leave it at that. So you start to, at a very basic level, before we get into the text, just investigate using your brain, right? Like, okay, I want to learn about Buddhism. This person's connected to the Dalai Lama's monastery. Okay, they went to Saraje, Saramay, Ganden, Drepung. They went to Ganden, Shartse, Shanse, Losaling, Rato, Gomang. All right, we start there. Okay. How long have they been teaching? How long have they had their Geshe degree, right? What did they do after their Geshe degree? They go to the Tantric University? Did they go do a Lam Rim retreat? This starts to separate out, the teachers. Did His Holiness, say, okay, this teacher is the one I want in that position? Is this what took place? There's so many worldly ways that we can start to investigate teachers and teachers that we should listen to. And you can also, then even hone it in further with YouTube. So you start to find the teacher that you think, sounds reasonable, then listen to them for 10 minutes or so, right? Like we said, we were at, I think, my house, and we were doing our house, doing the memorial for Rinpoche. We were saying, Dzong Rinpoche was saying there's 3 levels of teachers. There's a lecturer teacher that you walk in the room, you pay respect to, you go there to learn something from. This word guru has really been distorted in the West. It really took on this high tantric, Milarepa Marpa, Tilo Naro meaning in the West, because we just take everything to an extreme, right? And looked at it as, oh, okay, if my Lama tells me to jump off a roof, I better do it, And that is just that's not what we as beginning students, myself as a beginning student, could possibly do around faith, around a teacher. It just, even at the level, and even in the 50 verses on Guru devotion, Ashvagosha says, if your teacher tells you to do something that you can't do, you explain why and you're polite about it. Even at the level of Guru devotion that I had with Kensur Geshe Wandak, if he told me to go on the roof and jump off, I would have told him I couldn't do that. So we have to, and that's 25 years. That's just a complete faith, like incontrovertible. I mean, but that doesn't mean that I would have thought he would tell me to do that, first of all, and he didn't. He never asked me to do anything that I didn't do. So we'll say that. He never asked me to do something I didn't do. But he never asked me to jump off a roof, and if he had, I wouldn't have. So we have to be very careful. There's a story about Tilo Naru. You'll read it about jumping off a roof. You have to be very careful with this word guru and devotion. Relying on a teacher is a much more literal translation of this. So Dzong Rinpoche says, first, you maybe go approach a teacher like a lecturer. Be respectful. You've checked them out, hopefully, so you're not just randomly walking in anywhere because you heard Buddhism is being talked about. That would be Buddhism would say you're stupid. As Geshe Dorji Damde would say, he's very direct. Buddhism would say you're stupid. If you're just waiting for some blessing, Buddha would say you're stupid. If you're in a dark room, don't pray to Buddha to turn on a light. Turn on a light. If you're sick, don't pray to Buddha. Say I'm sick. Pray to Buddha and then go to a doctor. We have to be very, very critical and use our brains, and especially initially, make sure we're checking. So you walk into this lecture hall and you listen to a lecture on Buddhism. Check it out. You haven't suddenly taken on them as a guru. You respect them from then on. You can say, oh, take this as good, take this as the bad, and look at it as just learning experience. Then he said there's another level of teacher. The next level of teacher is like the perfection vehicle teacher, where now you can put them, that teacher, through faith, through checking, through deciding this is my teacher. I trust this person. And we'll get into what kind of person that would be in a little bit. Then you can put them in your meditation in the merit field, in the Sangha category, right? Not as the Buddha necessarily. You can, but you can put them even just as Sangha in your meditation at that point, in the perfection vehicle. And then when you get into Tantrayana, yes, you see them as Vajradhara. You see them as the Buddha. But even at that point, it depends on your level of realization. You're trying to always do that and get better and better at doing that. But it's something that comes through trust, through years, through studies, and so forth. It isn't something that just should naturally fall out of the sky. You can feel a connection quickly. But even Lord Atisha, when he got to Indonesia, after a 13-month boat ride to go see Sir Limpa, he didn't get off the boat and run to see Sir Limpa. Sir Limpa was known as the greatest master of bodhicitta in the world at the time. And Lord Atisha didn't just take that as a reputation. Lord Atisha went and questioned all Sir Limpa's students. And then after he did that, he found Sir Limpa was suitable to take teachings from, and then learned bodhicitta from Sir Limpa and considered him his highest guru, even though Sir Limpa had a lower view in terms of the philosophical final view. Sir Limpa did not hold the prasangika view. Atisha already did, but he considered Sir Limpa to be his highest guru because he taught him bodhicitta. So we have to be able to first check out to some degree who we're listening to. And then we can go further and see if they meet the qualifications that Lord Maitreya says they need to meet. And in the questions of Sabahu Tantra that are presented. But we first just have to use our own brains to check and see if this person is, operating within the normal kind of ways too, in a lot of ways. If we're needing some real specific information, we don't need anything abstract and strange. We need straightforward and direct. So fortunate that we had Rinpoche, who came to us with this pure lineage that was just had absolutely no agenda, right? Other than to teach. The only agenda was for us to be able to learn the correct understanding of Buddhism. And I think everyone would agree that was Rinpoche's pure agenda. He didn't really have any other pure agenda. And when I go over and over these points about what a teacher should have, right? So we'll get a little bit now into the text. So this section is called Relying on a Teacher. And it says how to rely on the teacher that's the root of the path. And then it says a somewhat elaborate explanation for developing certain knowledge. So what does that mean? Certain knowledge about what? Well, certain knowledge that, so then you read in Lama Tsongkhapa's texts from the scriptural collection of the Bodhisattvas, the Bodhisattva Pitaka, it says, so what are you trying to develop certain knowledge of? You're trying to develop certain knowledge that attaining and bringing to completion all the bodhisattva deeds, and likewise attaining and bringing to completion the perfections, levels, forbearances, concentration, super knowledges, retentions of teachings heard, dedications, aspirational prayers, confidence to speak, and all the qualities of the Buddha are contingent upon the Lama. The Lama is the root from which they arise. The Lama is the source and creator from which they are produced. The Lama increases them. They depend upon the Lama. The Lama is their cause. So what this section of Lama Tsongkhapa's text is trying to do is to get us to gain certain knowledge that all of those things are true about the teacher. Because we first start with this reliance upon the teacher and see that it's the foundation of everything good in the beginning, in the middle, and the end. And the end at the highest levels of Tantra. We have this indispensable, we would call guru devotion at that point, that we must have in order for it to work, for many reasons we don't need to get into right now. But that swiftest path relies upon our relationship with the teacher and the maturity of that relationship that begins its maturation here, where we start to see them as an object that would be worthy of that much veneration, right? So we're building, at this point in the Lam Rim Chema, why are we starting with the teacher? Well, the teacher, we're going to need them, right? At the very, very end, throughout the whole process. Obviously, for learning, we need to be taught by someone in order to understand information, in order to check to see if our realizations are real, in order to check to see if we're actually making progress, or we need to apply certain antidotes that we don't know of. We need the teacher through that process. But then this very, very special relationship, Vajra master and student, takes place that is so much more powerful than even the one at this sutra level that we're using these signs and reasonings to establish. But without this foundation that establishes certain knowledge about the qualities of relying on the teacher, we won't familiarize ourselves enough again and again and again to be able to have the wisdom arisen from analysis, and then eventually have the wisdom that's directly realized about the guru, a direct perception about these qualities of the guru. So this has to come about through hearing this information. And then in this section's quite large, you know, it really is. And the reasoning and how to rely on thought and how to rely on practice, what students should be and what teachers should be, and pretty extensive section when you look at it. And we needn't hastily run through it, because if it's the foundation of all of our good qualities, we need to understand that, because it'll make us listen to a teaching in a different way. No matter who's teaching it, it'll make us listen to that person differently, because we'll hear medicine, you know, being given to us. We'll believe we have the chronic illness of grasping at things as being truly established and cherishing ourselves over others. We'll look at this as a disease that we have, and that the only thing that could get rid of this disease is by hearing these words that are coming out of an instructor's mouth, going into our ears over and over and over and over and over and over again. It's the long cure. It's the long cure. When we look at just regular diseases, we have experience now with, okay, if you want to get over, you know, and if you're lucky enough to do so, a very, you know, introductory level of a cancer treatment. the beginning of it, it's probably 6 years or something of treatment for that one illness that you have to do. And we're willing to do that because we know that it takes a long time to get rid of that illness. Imagine if we have something we've had since beginningless time. It's always just beginninglessly. We've grasped at things incorrectly. Beginninglessly. We've been so selfish, cherished others. No, like with very, very, very little emphasis. Cherished ourselves with extreme emphasis since beginningless time. And in all the texts, it's called the chronic disease that we have. And in the Lam Rim it says we look at it like we're sick. We have this disease. So of course, the cure for this disease is going to be repeated medicine, repeated treatments, repeated medicine. Maybe the meditation's treatment, right? Sitting, and the analysis, and the rest is like the medicine, like the treatments and the medicine, just repeatedly having to do it over and over again, hearing the same thing over and over again. When you cure a disease, you take the same medicine over and over again. You're okay with that? Now we hear like something about the Lam Rim 20 times, and we're like, man, I wish they'd just move on to something more complex. Well, has your mind been saturated to the point where you've realized this? That's the question. Has it gotten enough medicine? Has it saturated it? Or is it at a surface level, just waiting to kind of blow away, waiting to be like a cloud that moves when the wind blows? And it just happens to be covering over, right, some of the things that are your ignorance for a moment. And then as soon as the wind blows, it just comes right back out. You have a correctly assuming consciousness according to the low rig, but you don't have something that's not controvertible. What you're assuming is right. Good job. But tomorrow you may not think that anymore. That's the danger. That's the danger of not taking this stuff to a full level of analysis. Even though we might believe the right thing, we may not believe it tomorrow. If we haven't ground it down into sesame, tahini paste, right? The sesame into tahini. If there's any particulates left, and it's mixed in there, then those things make it not pure tahini. Make it, and when we have anything left that we don't completely understand, and it's lingering around in terms of realization of each of these Lam Rim topics, then it isn't realization. It's just a correctly assuming consciousness. Even if it's right, it's correctly assuming consciousness. You still have stages before you get to an actual like correct, valid cognition, inference, or direct. So it's very, very important to hear these things over and over again, to look at what the qualities of a teacher are. And what's wonderful is when you realize, especially a teacher like Kensei Geshe Wandak, the qualities that Maitreya says a teacher needs, and then you start to match it up, it just brings like so much faith into your heart, because it shows that there's a being out there that has reached this, and so can I, because they have the same ingredient that makes it so can everyone. They have this Buddha nature, this Buddha potential. So they did it, so can I. And when we look at them, it's just so clear that Rinpoche had them. So what are the defining characteristics? We'll do a little of it, and then I don't know if some of you know about in Goshen, there's a big Tibet festival today, like big Tibet festival. It's I think it's only like $10 too to go in or something. You can look it up on the internet, Goshen Tibet Festival. And there are crafts and making mandalas, I think. A lot of wonderful stuff going on. So I think it starts at 11 to maybe 5 today. But sorry I didn't send out an announcement about it sooner, but it's been a little busy. So I apologize. So what's a define? How do we define the teacher that we should rely upon? So we've heard this quote so many times from the Ornament of Mahayana Sutras, Mahayana Sutra Alamkara by Lord Maitreya. So he says, you rely on a Mahayana teacher. So this is about a Mahayana teacher who is disciplined, serene, thoroughly pacified, has qualities surpassing those of the students, is energetic, has a wealth of scriptural knowledge, possesses loving concern, has thorough knowledge of reality, skill in instructing, and has abandoned dispiritedness. Okay. So this is a perfect teacher, what a perfect teacher would look like. And we'll get into later on, it goes on to say, well, in these degenerate times, how are we going to find someone like that? What do we do? And then it gets into points about that as well, which we'll get into. So let's look at what this quote means. We won't read the entire Lam Rim Chemo, but let's take a look at this quote. So these first things, rely on a teacher who is disciplined, serene, and thoroughly pacified. So the great commentaries say that this is referring to the three highest higher trainings. So the highest higher training in ethics, concentration, and wisdom. So it begins with discipline because it says it's the found in all of the texts. In Arya Nagarjuna's text, ethical discipline, it states in the letter to a friend, is like the foundation. It's like the ground from which anything can grow. And in the Sutra of the Vows of Individual Liberation, it says the vows of individual liberation are the bridle set with sharp nails. With constant effort, they are fit for the difficult terrain horse for straying the mind. So you really need to have ethical behavior to do any of this. It serves as the foundation. When we look at how you achieve single pointed concentration, and so forth, it talks about having to have the foundation of ethics, and so forth. So then the next quality it talks about is serenity. So this is talking about the higher training in meditative concentration, and thoroughly pacified. It talks about the training in wisdom, that meaning that the concentration has pacified enough to be able to focus on wisdom in a way. So it's the wisdom that's brought about through a concentration. Does that make sense? Like the highest higher training wisdom is kind of the concentration works with it to bring it about. So these are the first three qualities that it talks about. Knowledge of reality is the fourth. And it says that best would be if they seen emptiness. So this is the best case, right? That knowledge of reality, meaning that if they've seen emptiness directly. But it's acceptable, it says, if they understand it through scripture and reasoning. They can understand the nature of reality, citing scripture, and then using reasoning to present it, but be able to really, really understand it, not just be able to give one syllogism and then walk away and think that that's the thorough understanding. Someone who can make their way through the understanding of emptiness and establish it in a clear fashion and know who it's appropriate to get into it in its real detailed fashions. So those are the first ones. So thorough knowledge of reality. And then it talks about having qualities that surpass those of the students. And there's a reason that it talks about that. It says that people who, and it says in the verses about friends, there's different friends out there, it's saying. It says people degenerate by relying on people who are inferior to themselves. By relying on equals, they stay the same. By relying on those superior, they attain excellence. They thus rely on those who are superior to yourself. So Rinpoche always said, you know, if you hang around with stupid people, you'll become stupid. If you hang around with people of your level of intelligence and only talk with them and only rely on them, you won't go anywhere. But if you listen to and rely upon and associate with those who are smarter than you, then you will learn something new, because you won't learn, you know. Yes, Rinpoche also said that a scholar can learn from a baby. So we have to understand this in the context of seeking out a teacher, right? Of course, we can learn something from everyone. We're looking to learn, like I said, the alphabet without any flaw, how to drive without any flaw, right? We're looking to learn Buddhism without any flaw, not the gist, not some antidotes, not something that kind of is it. We're looking to learn it without a flaw. So if we're looking to learn it without a flaw, we really need to seek high scope people, intelligent people, people who know more than us. If we're just hanging around with people who and trying to learn from people who don't know more than us, then we're really not going to advance our understanding. It says, if you rely on whomever is superior, thoroughly pacified and endowed with excellent discipline and exceeding wisdom, you will become superior even to those who are superior. So it's specific about those. Okay, so let's go back to this. I did them a little bit out of order, but that's okay. Has good qualities, is energetic. So is, you know, energetic in giving the teachings, isn't, you know, too tired to give them, will give the teachings anytime. When asked, says yes, you know, isn't glum about having to do it. You know, is somebody who's energetic, who is finding joy in doing virtue, right? And energetic here, it's finding that kind of joy in doing virtue. Has a wealth of scriptural knowledge, so knows their stuff, right? Going back to when you're checking out a teacher, find out if they know their stuff. Not hard to find that out, right? Check out their bio, find out who their teachers were, find out how long they studied with them, find out when they studied with them, what their capacity in studying with them. A lot of people will say, I've been studying for 30 years, and they've been to like 30 classes. You know what I mean? Find out what their jacket, you know, check the jacket, find out what what's their resume, check it. If you were going to hire them to do like a dishwashing job in a restaurant, you'd call references, you'd check their resume, but we see a flyer about some random Buddhist teaching going on, and we just get in our car and go. A smart Buddhist would never do that. The Buddha would never tell us to do that. The Buddha told us not to do that with himself. The Buddha said, don't just listen to my teachings because I'm the Buddha and say it's true. Like a piece of gold, cut it, rub it, check it, make sure it's pure gold, like a goldsmith would. And once you realize it's gold, once you realize it's the true thing, then follow me, then say you're my student. Don't be a stupid follower, be a smart follower. That's what the Buddha said. So that's what we need to do when we're looking at who we should learn from. They should have a wealth of scriptural knowledge. They should know how to put the framework of the Lam Rim together, right? And be able to explain it and present it if that's what you're looking to learn, right? So possessing loving concern. They have to care about the students. You know, do they have a caring? Do they have affection, right? Loving concern for the students? Do they seem to want to do this for them? Or is it just some exercise in, you know, bombastic language and, you know, intellectual chess? And, you know, is it just an expression of ego, or is it out of love for the students? We always have to check that when we're teaching, when we're explaining things, because it's exciting sometimes, right? And when you have a mind that's looked at these texts it starts, getting exciting, and you can get ahead of yourself ego-wise, and think that, oh yeah, I really know this now, and then find out that there's still big particulates in the tahini paste. It's not tahini yet. It's tahini with some sesame seeds still in it. Tahini doesn't have that. It's just paste. It's smooth, right? It's got the particulates in it still. So anyway, possessing loving concern, has thorough knowledge of reality. We went over that. A skill in instructing, right? Do they use examples? Do they quote texts? Are they able to keep your attention? Geshe Dorje Damdu is, the whole time, he doesn't let anyone keep their cameras off. The whole time he's like, how many of you agree with me? Raise your hand right now. He raises his hand and he goes like this. And he does this every few minutes, right? And then he out of nowhere asks a question, and then says, who knows the answer? Who knows the answer? And then if he says, does anyone have questions? And no one has questions, he says, oh, I see you've understood everything that I've taught. Now I'll ask questions. So it's really helpful. It keeps you on your toes. And you can just tell that he has that loving concern. He wants so badly everyone in the room to know and understand what he's saying. He's just so invested in them leaving and knowing everything that he said without missing one thing, and then he'll tell you the things that if you don't get it, it's okay. Forget it. It's okay. It's too hard right now. But the beginner stuff that's not beginner stuff at all, he is just making sure and so concerned that you're getting it. You see that loving concern. You see it. You'd see it with Rinpoche. Rinpoche told the same story a million times. So many stories, the same story a million times, right? He had that love for us. He was just so willing. He wanted us to know what it meant so badly. So that's what it means. You can see it when someone has that. Skill in instructing disciples and loving concern is the skills there, and has abandoned dispiritedness. And that is, even if you have to explain it 100,000 times, something like, no, you say a like a. Sometimes though it's you say it like a. Even if you have to say that 101,000 times, the 101,000th time doesn't make you any less like willing to say it or discouraged than the first time you said it. Because you're not there for any other reason than the person getting it, and they just didn't yet. Your only purpose is to be there so that they get the information that you said. And if a question's asked 100,000 times and you've answered it 100,000 times, and then it's asked the 101,000th time or whatever, there's no feeling of, wow, God, again? It's a joy the teacher has in saying, maybe this time, right? The first time they said it, it's maybe this time everyone got it. And then they hear the question come and go, okay, maybe this time they got it. The 101,000th time, they're still, oh, maybe this time they got it. That's abandoning dispiritedness. So we can check and see, does the teacher have some of these qualities? Do they have all of these qualities? And when I look at Rinpoche, I see, oh man, he had them all. He had his teachers asking him if he had seen emptiness. When he was in Varanasi in the 70s, like one of his teachers, like looking at him, asking if he had seen emptiness already, not because like to check him, because he was such a curious character. And when we asked him back 23 years ago in his room, he like couldn't lie. We said, have you seen emptiness directly? It was when we were naive and thought we could just ask Rinpoche anything about his realizations. And we just asked him everything, right? We didn't think anything was private, right? And we said, have you seen it? I think Adrian was there with me. Have you seen emptiness? And he went like, well, and he started to shake his head. And then his face turned red. And he smiled like he looked like he'd eaten a canary. I remember it like he's right in front of me right now doing it. It's like, oh, it's giving me goosebumps, right? Like he'd like eaten a canary and he goes, a little. just a little. And right, like, how do you see emptiness a little? Like you see, we know Arya Deva said, once you see the emptiness of a phenomena, you see the emptiness of all phenomena because you can apply it, right? So there's no little seeing it, it could be interpreted in many ways, but what an amazing, amazing thing that we had and still have in terms of guru devotion, in terms of relying upon a teacher, and in terms of knowing that the teacher that we were able to rely upon for so long was so qualified and had so much loving concern for us, and had the highest higher training in ethics, had the highest higher training in concentration, had the highest higher training in wisdom, had good qualities that surpassed mine, had energy to teach, had a wealth of scriptural knowledge, had love for us, had a knowledge of the nature of reality, skill in instructing, and could say anything 1,000,000 times if he had to, just so we got it. He abandoned its spiritedness. So how lucky are we that we stumbled into that? Our karma obviously forced us into that relationship. Our previous connections to Rinpoche forced us into that connection. Our previous connections with the Dharma forced us into that pure relationship. But how lucky are we to have had tasted that true, pure Dharma, been able to witness a bodhisattva in front of us for all of those years, a bodhisattva Arya, someone who's seen, had a little, have you seen emptiness? Maybe a little, and who said to me that he was a bodhisattva at the end of his life. We saw an Arya bodhisattva. I mean, how many people have that experience of to rely upon that kind of special being? That analogy of on an airplane, looking out the window and seeing all those lights. What percentage of them met with a holy being? How many of them met a bodhisattva who cared so much about us, who had this knowledge that was so high that he never even uttered because he was so kind to us, because he knew what we needed. He knew what our scope was. So going back to the beginning of the teaching today, there's so many different aptitudes of beings, so many different needs. We clearly had some really specific needs that a bodhisattva came and helped us with. But we played such a big part in that relationship by not letting it break, by going again and again and again, by still listening to those teachings, by seeing Rinpoche still on our crown, by seeing Rinpoche still in front of us in the front generation form when we're generating ourselves as deities. Still seeing the deity as our guru as the deity at that highest level. And who'd have thought through those very basic teachings on refuge and the 10 non-virtues that Rinpoche hammered into us over and over again, that any one of us could imagine ourselves as a deity and imagine a front generation form of a deity? Who would have imagined this unruly being that's talking in front of you to go from that starting point to having the ability to imagine these kind of practices, let alone taste them slightly? That is what the guru, that is what the teacher does for us. I kept saying to these doctors, you have to do everything. Anything good about me is because of this person. And this person wants to live as many moments as possible. You have to understand that this is where we're coming from. I'm coming from this place that I'm not going to stop, because I've realized that everything that I have that's good is because of them. And they're not going to stop because they're showing me that everything that they have that is good and will be good is going to depend upon this condition of a human basis and what we can do in it. Rinpoche taught us that. Rinpoche went to great, great extremes to do preposterous things to stay alive. Preposterous at the end. He showed us the very last moments, that last time he was on Zoom and choked. He was so unwell and he was still sitting on Zoom looking at all of us. He showed us that this human basis is so precious and that we have to take every moment. And then he showed us what happens. Even the Buddha passes out of this world before our eyes, as we will too. He showed us that last teaching of impermanence. He showed us that death meditation that he taught us over and over again. Death will come and nothing can stop it. We don't know when, and nothing can help but Dharma. As soon as he told me he was going to pass, he leaned back and started going like this. I swear, I have a video of it. He didn't have a bell and door, Jay. As soon as he said that, nothing could help but Dharma. And I'm sharing this so that as a witness to his teachings, he continued to give us and continues to give us. Just look at his teachings on the video. And if you don't feel you achieve that connection, just keep meditating on it. Believe that I had it. I'll tell you that. There's not an hour that passes in my life when I'm conscious. And then when I'm sleeping too, that I don't have that connection with Rinpoche. I don't think about Rinpoche. And it's not because he was my idol in the sense of, wow, he was the best guitar player, or wow, he made great movies. It was because he had realized what could make me happy forever. And he had given up on everything that doesn't make you happy forever. He gave up on all of it. And he showed us how to give up on everything that does not cause complete fearlessness and infinite happiness. And I have no doubt in my mind that he showed me that in a clear fashion and in a way that will never allow me to think the same again. Never allow me to think the same again. And that is how you rely upon a teacher. You day and night, you listen to what they say, and you become convinced because of how they are that it's real. And you become convinced because of what they're saying sounds convincing. And then you apply it to become who they've become. Imagine if you could just have the realizations that we saw Rinpoche had. Nothing could affect him. It's incredible at the end. Nothing. Just going through the greatest suffering, and there was like no, okay, like that still. Like, oh, do you want this for lunch or that for lunch? Okay. You know, just like that. In the face of just immense amount of difficulty and what we would consider embarrassment, vulnerability, having to trust, just complete faith. And then I'll end with this. I remember asking him, he was so vulnerable at the end, you know, and we started getting the VNA people in, and they were strangers. And I said, Rinpoche, it was after a couple of days of it, would you rather I just call your students and have them do these jobs, you know, even though they aren't professionals? He said, call my students. I'd rather have them, that if they can. And then we didn't have much time after that, but just a complete, always thinking of others, thinking, oh, my students have a great connection with me and I can help them create merit around my vulnerability. Imagine having that kind of love for others, wanting to be as vulnerable as you can in front of someone and as much pain in front of someone so that you can help them. That's a lot. So anyway, on that note, that's what I know about the beginning before we get into the real technical parts about Guru devotion. Of course, we get into some other points about qualities. I love the analogy about, if you had somebody saying, oh, sandalwood's the greatest thing in the world. It smells so wonderful and everybody should have sandalwood and it's so great. And then somebody said, oh, well, how much do you have for sale? And they say, oh, I don't have any sandalwood. That's like a teacher who doesn't have the qualities that they should, who's just talking about, Buddhism. You really need to find somebody who's had some kind of investment in it and is convincing. And Rinpoche certainly was very, very convincing. So I'll end with that. Anybody have any questions? Okay. We'll do the concluding prayers. I don't have my laptop. Okay, so I wanted to start ending also adding the 8 verses for training the mind. I don't have the text in front of me, unfortunately. So if you have the text, your own text, just read it sometime. I want to conclude the teachings always with that also. I will be concluding it with that. Awesome. So thank you so much. So this is a Lojong text by Geshe Langritamba. It's a text that Rinpoche taught many times. It's a text that I should just be able to recite without it in front of me because I had it memorized. I'm a leaky pot, by the way. I had this text very, very memorized 20 years ago. I mean, every day I would recite it. It's kind of funny because I can look back. I was at the Tibet Center and I felt very fond of myself. Chungla Rinpoche was there and Geshe Nikki was there and lots of people were there back then, a lot of scholars. And I remember being so impressed with myself that I had this memorized and I was able to, as everyone else was reading and, I was making sure that I had my head up, right? And I was chanting this away and I was very impressed with myself. And it just goes to show you that now I don't have it memorized. So there was nothing whatsoever to be impressed with at all because I had not committed it to memory thoroughly enough. So it's funny when we can look back on ourselves and laugh at how arrogant we were, how prideful we were, how delusional we were, how ignorant we were. And we have to laugh. And if we're laughing, it means we're a little less, hopefully. So it's all good, right? So the 8 verses for training the mind by Geshe Langritamba, if we could start to live like this, right? If we could take from this moment on and live a little more like Geshe Langritamba says, then I guarantee you that things will be better than they were before we started doing that, right? And we'll be better human beings if we live more like Geshe Langritamba says in this mind training text. And then if we're better human beings, those human beings around us will be benefited more because maybe we won't be so sour. Maybe we won't yell back at them. Maybe they'll, be benefited by us in all ways instead of just those that we find strangers and our friends. And even our enemies will be benefited if we could try to adapt a little bit more of this. The 8 verses of Training the Mind by Geshe Langritamba. With the determination to accomplish the highest welfare of all sentient beings who surpass even a wish-granting jewel, I will learn to hold them supremely dear. Whenever I associate with others, I will learn to think of myself as the lowest amongst all and respectively hold others to be supreme from the very depths of my heart. In all actions, I will learn to search into my mind, and as soon as a disturbing emotion arises, endangering myself and others, I will firmly face and avert it. I will learn to cherish ill-natured beings and those oppressed by strong misdeeds and sufferings as if I had found a precious treasure difficult to find. When others out of jealousy treat me badly with abuse, slander, and so on, I will learn to take all loss and offer victory to them. When the one whom I benefited with great hope unreasonably hurts me very badly, I will learn to view that person as an excellent spiritual guide. In short, I will learn to offer to everyone without exception all help and happiness directly and indirectly, and respectfully take upon myself all harm and suffering of my mothers. I will learn to keep all these practices undefiled by the stains of the 8 worldly concerns, and by understanding all phenomena as like illusions, be released from the bondage of attachment. Concluding mandala offering and dedication prayer. The fundamental ground is scented with incense and strewn with flowers, adorned with Mount Meru, the 4 continents, the sun and the moon. I imagine this as a Buddha land and offer it. May all sentient beings enjoy this pure land. I dedicate whatever virtues I've collected for the benefit of the teachings and of all sentient beings, and in particular for the essential teachings of Venerable Lojong Drapa to shine forever. I send forth this jeweled mandala to you, precious Guru. I dedicate all this virtue to emulate the knowledge of the hero Manjushri and likewise Samantabhadra as well, with whatever dedication is praised as supreme by all the conquerors who traverse the 3 times. I also dedicate all my roots of virtue for the sake of auspicious deeds. In that pure land surrounded by snowy mountains, you are the source of all benefit and happiness, all powerful Avalokiteshvara Tenzin Gyatso, may you stay until samsara's end. I hope everyone was able to see the beautiful long life ceremony for His Holiness the Dalai Lama. They just did in India. Different groups of Tibetans, including one Sarah J. Geshe, put on the ceremony, and they did the white Tara wish-fulfilling wheel practice. So a practice that's associated with the exact initiation that Rinpoche gave us over and over and over again. So I really encourage everyone to watch it. It doesn't go through all of those exact details, but you'll find so many similarities, and it'll help you connect with His Holiness, help His, us to keep His Holiness in the world longer, and help you connect with White Tara even more and more. A very beautiful ceremony, and Sandong Rinpoche is on the throne there. Very, very, very important master. Rinpoche loved so much, and is actually Geshe Aga's teacher, Umzela. So wonderful, wonderful ceremony. So now let us make prayers that we will never be separated from Khenso Geshe Wanda. We will connect with him in whatever form he emanates from the Dharmakaya, and that we may connect with him in the emanation body, and that when we see emptiness directly and become Arya Bodhisattvas, may we also meet with him in his Sambhokaya form, in the enjoyment body, and learn from him in that pure land. And in the meantime, let us create all the causes and conditions and create and collect all the merit that would be necessary to keep that relationship intact and swiftly meet with those emanations. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Jeff.
You're welcome. I hope that the fur babies are doing okay. Lakshmi, and I forget the name of always. What's her name again?
Parvati.
Parvati. I I was like Parva, Parva. My mind was doing all this gymnastics and I gave up. I'm sorry.
No, that's
Parvati,
okay.
I
She
so
actually,
pray. I so
I
pray
turned
for her.
off, I turned off my camera because she wanted to be in a position where she could see you. So,
Aw,
and I didn't really want her on video, you know, being filmed in this state of, you know, vulnerability. But just when you were saying her name, she's been laying here like almost, you know, gone. And then you said her name and she popped her head up to look at you. So
so
thank you.
everyone pray for Parvati. It's a ferret who's been on Zoom with us quite a bit over the last couple of years. And Parvati is looking like she's at the end of her life. And we've been doing prayers, and Alessandra's been playing the Sanchu Mulam and reciting Tara, and we've done some mantras for her. And just imagine that His Holiness and Geshe Gompo and Rinpoche and all these texts are sending light rays of blessings and nectars of blessings to Parvati and her sister to be able to get through this hard time. And anybody else who's struggling or having any difficulties going on, know that the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas and the holy beings are always with us and always looking on us with love. And even though we don't see them, we always have these protectors around us. We always have Rinpoche right at our heart or right on our crown or right in front of us, wherever we need him. And he never leaves us. We didn't have the karma and maybe don't have the karma to be able to visually see him in his full form. But even Kirtripche, who was so sad when his Lama passed, didn't have the karma to see Tsongkhapa anymore, but he had 5 visions that occurred and then was able to meet with Tsongkhapa in the Pure Land at the end of his life. So look at those stories of the previous masters. Don't feel that you're alone in feeling sad. Kirtripche, Lama Tsongkhapa's root disciple, you know, one of the sons of Lama Tsongkhapa, really was sad from the moment Tsongkhapa left, but was able to meet with Tsongkhapa in 5 visions and then meet with him directly again in the Pure Land of Tushita, as the story goes. So thank you, everyone. I pray that everybody that you love and that you are all healthy and can live long and good lives. See you next time. Hopefully we're all better than we were this week, next week.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.